I came home to find my daughter, my baby, on the couch, pale and shaking, her jeans slit at the knee, and her legs swollen like it had been filled with gravel and betrayal. "Mom," she whispered, "it hurts so bad." I dropped my keys, dropped my heart. "What happened?" She hesitated, then said it like it was normal, like she was used to not mattering. "I think I broke it. I slipped on the back steps 4 hours ago."
4 hours
ago. I turned to my parents, her grandparents, and to my sister, who sat at the dining table scrolling her phone like this was any other Tuesday. She said it hurt, but she was crying too much to make sense. My mom shrugged. Dad didn't even look at me. We didn't have time to take her to the... Then my sister added without flinching. We had to pick up dry cleaning and get gas. She needed to toughen up anyway. My name is Danielle Hart. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt your love for your family rot right there in your chest? I didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't beg for decency. I picked up my daughter like she was 5 again despite the weight, despite her pain, and took her to the ER myself. Compound fracture, multiple small bone shards, and early signs of infection from walking on it. Yes, they made her walk. For 3 hours. I sat beside her hospital bed all night. She slept holding my hand, and I stared at the ceiling thinking, this wasn't just cruelty. It was convenience disguised as love. So I didn't text them, didn't answer their calls. Instead, I made a few calls of my own, the kind that don't come with warning shots. And 4 days later, they were screaming, but not out of rage, out of panic. 4 days later, I sent one email, just one, to Adult Protective Services, and another to my lawyer. See, they thought they were untouchable. They thought I needed them, that because they'd watched my daughter while I worked, they could treat her like a burden. What they didn't know was, I had everything. The photos of her bruised leg, the ER report, time-stamped, fracture severity, infection risk, and the part that broke me in half. Patient reports being made to walk on injury for extended period. Family dismissed pain. Delay in care may result in complications. They thought they were the caregivers, but the only thing they gave her was trauma. I filed an official report. Negligence. Reckless endangerment of a minor. And I named all 3. My mother, my father, and my sister. The investigator called them on a Thursday. Asked simple questions. Why was there a delay in care? Who was supervising the minor? Why wasn't emergency transport provided? I wasn't there to see it, but I heard it, because later that day, they showed up on my front porch, pounding on the door like the house was on fire. Faces flushed, hands flying, voices panicked. Mom, you called the state on us? Dad, do you know what you've done? My sister, mascara smudged from fake tears. You're overreacting. It was just a sprain. I stepped outside.
Come clean.
Holding the crutch they made my daughter use like a weapon of silence. Say that again, I said, to her face. They all fell quiet, because she was standing behind me now, in a new boot, face steady. And she said it for me. It wasn't a sprain. You just didn't care. My mom reached for her. I stepped between them. You lost access the moment she begged for help, and you chose gas over humanity. My lawyer called that evening. Restraining order?
Filed.
Emergency custody paperwork?
Done.
Power of medical decision? Revoked. Permanently. I didn't raise my voice. I just raised the standard.
And now?
They were the ones limping behind the truth. By Monday morning, word had spread. Small towns have a way of swallowing secrets whole until someone spits them back up with receipts. My sister's Facebook wall turned quiet. No inspirational quotes. No staged coffee photos. Just silence. Because her post from a week ago, family is everything 2 hearts, now had a dozen comments under it. Left speech bubble. Didn't you leave your niece with a broken leg? Left speech bubble. Tough love doesn't mean neglect. Left speech bubble. You made her walk on a fracture? What the hell is wrong with you? I hadn't said a word publicly. Didn't have to. The truth had its own legs now, unbroken ones. And the people who once praised them? started pulling away like the room had caught fire. At the grocery store, my mom tried to act normal, but the cashier, who'd once hugged her at church, wouldn't make eye contact. Even the pharmacist who used to call her by name handed her the receipt without a word. Reputation?
Gone.
Their facade cracked like bone. Meanwhile, my daughter started to heal. Physically, slowly. But more importantly, emotionally. She stopped flinching when people raised their voice. She stopped apologizing for asking for a glass of water. She started laughing again. And I started building something better. Found a new sitter. A woman who treats kids like people, not inconveniences. Moved our appointments to a new clinic. One where the nurses knew her name by day 2. I came home to drawings on the fridge. Little stick figures, one with crutches, the other holding her hand. Underneath, she'd written, "Me and Mom. Safe." That night, I opened my inbox. A message from the investigator. Formal case is proceeding. They may be called for interviews under oath. Do not contact them. All communication should go through your legal counsel. I poured a glass of wine, tucked my daughter in, watched her sleep with both arms above her head, like she was no longer guarding herself. And I whispered, "They don't get to hurt you ever again. Not even in memory." They thought I'd explode, but instead, I erased them. 3 weeks later, it came. A letter in a cheap white envelope. No return address. No handwriting. Just my name, typed like a final attempt at control. Inside, a printed message from my mother. Asterisk Danielle, this has all gone too far. Families argue. Mistakes happen. But reporting your own blood? That's beyond cruel. Your sister is devastated. Your father hasn't slept. This is your final chance to undo what you've done. Come to the house.
Sit down.
Let's fix this before you destroy everything. Asterisk. I folded the letter. Poured myself a coffee.
Laughed.
Because the audacity it takes to break a child, to deny her emergency care, to make her walk on a broken leg, and then call me the destroyer? That's not love. That's narcissism dressed in family values. I walked to the trash can and dropped the letter in, like it belonged exactly there. Then I sat with my daughter as she picked out new shoes. Her first day back at school was next week. We chose glittery ones. Not because they were flashy. Because they made her smile, without flinching. That night, I told her the truth. You don't ever have to see them again. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to choose peace over people who think pain makes you tougher. She nodded slowly, then asked, "Does that make me bad?" I pulled her in. "No, baby. That makes you free." My sister tried texting again. "Speech balloon, you've made your point. Can we stop now?" I didn't reply, because I hadn't made a point. I had drawn a line, and I was watching them drown on the other side of it. The case moved forward. Formal investigation. Potential charges of negligence. But that wasn't the justice I cared about. The real justice was watching my daughter walk again. Not in pain, not out of fear, but into a world where no one gets to call abuse discipline or betrayal love. They wanted to teach her pain, but I taught her power. They used to control everything. The stories,
The tone.
the way people looked at me in town. Danielle's too sensitive. She always overreacts. You know how she is when it comes to her daughter. But not anymore. Because when the county filed a formal notice, it became public record. Negligent supervision of a minor resulting in delayed medical care. 3 names listed. My mom, my dad, my sister. Suddenly, they weren't the victims in hushed kitchen conversations. They were the problem. And the narrative they'd clung to like armor?
Shattered.
My sister lost her babysitting gig. The local mom group blacklisted her. One parent posted anonymously. Left speech bubble. If she let her own niece walk on a broken leg, what would she do to a kid that's not blood? My father tried damage control. He went to church and cried during testimony. Pray for our family, he sniffled. We're under attack. But the pastor's wife, who's a nurse, stood up after and calmly said, I've read the medical report. Neglect isn't a family disagreement. It's a crime. Even the ones who used to take their side started crossing the street when they saw them. They came undone, one layer at a time. Not because I screamed, not because I begged, but because I documented every photo, every message, every silence. And when people finally saw it, they couldn't unsee it. Meanwhile, my daughter was thriving. PT sessions turned into dance classes, crutches into sneakers, whispers into giggles. She even asked if we could repaint her room. I wanted to feel like mine again, she said. So we did. Lavender walls, new posters, soft lights. And on her door, she hung a sign. No toxicity beyond this point. The night we finished, she hugged me tight and said, "Thank you for choosing me." I whispered, "Always." Because breaking the cycle doesn't start with screaming. It starts with one choice. Protect the innocent, even if it means losing the familiar. They thought they could tell the story for me. But I took the pen back. It was a Sunday. Quiet, ordinary until it wasn't. I was in the produce aisle, choosing apples with my daughter by my side. Her hair tied up in a pink scarf, a sparkle in her step I hadn't seen in months. When I heard that familiar, too cheerful voice behind me.
Oh, Danielle.
There you are. I turned slowly. My mom, holding a basket full of nothing, like she came to shop but couldn't remember what for. She smiled like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't made my daughter walk on a shattered leg. Like she hadn't tried to rewrite the entire story in her own blood-soaked font. "Can we talk for just a second?" she asked. My daughter froze next to me. I felt her hand tighten around mine. I stepped between them.
No.
Mom blinked. "What do you mean no?" "I'm your mother." I said it without emotion, like I was reading it from a courtroom script. "You are a biological relative who endangered my child. That's where your role ends." People were watching now. Employees, strangers, neighbors who once invited her to potlucks. Now standing still, pretending not to hear. "You're being so cold," she hissed. "You're teaching her to hate us." I leaned in just enough so she could hear the venom she once called softness. "I'm teaching her that silence isn't strength. That family doesn't mean forgiving cruelty. That love without safety is just manipulation with better lighting." She reached out. I stepped back. "You don't get to touch us," I said. "Not anymore." I turned and walked away. My daughter's head high beside me. Behind us, I heard my mother drop something. Maybe it was her basket. Maybe it was the illusion that she still had access. Either way, I didn't turn around. Because healing doesn't always look like closure. Sometimes, it looks like a quiet walk away from a woman you used to call mom, while your daughter watches and learns what protection really means. And I wasn't teaching her revenge. I was teaching her freedom. It happened at school. Parent-teacher conference. Her biology teacher said, "She's different now. More sure of herself." She told the class she wants to be a trauma surgeon. I blinked. "She never told me that." He smiled. "She said it's because she wants to be the person she never had before." Later that night, I told her, "I'm proud of you for being brave enough to imagine a future." She looked at me, eyes firm. I didn't want to be stuck in that house forever. I thought that's how adults were supposed to act. Cold. Dismissive. I shook my head.
No.
That's how broken adults behave when they never heal. You don't have to carry any of that. Then she said it. The line that will stay with me forever. They thought walking on my leg would teach me pain, but it taught me to never be like them. Her voice didn't crack. She didn't look for approval. She wasn't scared anymore. That weekend, I let her write a letter.
To them.
Not to reopen anything, but to close it properly. It was simple. Typed, printed, sealed. "You hurt me. You didn't listen. You made me walk when I was already broken. But I'm healing now. And that healing doesn't include you. I don't need an apology. I need space. And I'm keeping it." We mailed it together. No return address. No expectation. We left it in the mailbox like a grave marker. Not because we wanted them to respond, but because we had nothing left to say. And that night, she laughed in her sleep. Not cried.
Laughed.
The kind of laugh that only comes when a child finally feels safe enough to forget the weight of survival. I watched her from the doorway and whispered, "They'll never touch this piece again." Because the most powerful thing I ever did wasn't protect her from monsters. It was teaching her how to never become one. It's been 6 months. Since the fracture. Since the silence. Since I stopped calling it family and started calling it what it really was, a wound I no longer press on to feel alive. We moved. Not far. Just far enough that no one drops by just to talk. The new house has light, big windows, and closets filled with peace instead of secrets. My daughter got a scholarship, wrote her essay on the day I stopped walking on pain and started walking in purpose. She didn't name them. She didn't have to. The truth had its own voice, and she let it sing. One evening, we sat on the porch, watching rain slide down the roof. She asked, "Do you ever miss them?" I didn't lie. Sometimes I miss the idea of them, the version I hoped they could be. She nodded. Me too. But I love what we have more. She rested her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in forever, there was no weight behind it. No fear. No apology. Just warmth. Real, earned, healed. The report closed last week. Case sealed. Protective order finalized. They can never contact her again without going through court. They haven't tried. Not since they realized I was no longer their scared little girl. I was a mother now. One who knew exactly what love is supposed to feel like, and everything it's not. We celebrated her 17th birthday in the backyard. Cake, music, real laughter. She ran across the grass in bare feet. And this time, nothing hurt. As I watched her glow under string lights, I realized we didn't just survive. We rebuilt. No apologies. No looking back. No more guilt dragging behind us like a leash. Because the cycle ends here. And it ends with us.
I stood in the kitchen, still in my work uniform, the mail in my hand trembling. It was a letter from my college, final notice. My tuition payment was overdue, and unless it was cleared within 5 business days, my enrollment would be frozen. I blinked, confused, my heart thudding hard against my ribs. That didn't make sense. I had $4,200 saved. My college fund. Every penny I'd earned from babysitting, working retail on weekends, and that one summer internship I landed after sending out 50 resumes. I rushed to my room, opened the banking app. My breath caught. 0 balance. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Maybe I used the wrong account. But when I looked through the transaction history, my stomach dropped. Multiple purchases at high-end stores. Louis Vuitton, Sephora, Apple. Thousands drained in days. I stormed into the living room, my voice shaking. "Where's my tuition money?" My mom didn't look up from her phone. "We used it," she said, casually like she was commenting on the weather. I couldn't breathe. "Used it? For what?" "For your sister," she replied flatly, finally glancing at me. She needed new clothes and a phone for her birthday. I stared at her, certain I had misheard. "You spent my college fund for her shopping spree?" "She deserved it more than you," she said, tilting her head slightly. "You're always so serious about school. Maybe this will help you relax." My dad walked in right then, nodded without shame. "You're always responsible, Chloe. You'll figure something out. Your sister needed a little joy." A little joy? They stole my future to give her a few selfies and handbags. My throat burned, but I couldn't even form a sentence. And then came the final punch. My sister walked by, flaunting her new heels, smirking. "Thanks for the early birthday gift," she said and winked. I stood there, frozen, like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. These were the people I had trusted, loved, sacrificed for, and they'd chosen her again, not just with words, but with my life. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Quietly, permanently. It wasn't just the $4,200. It wasn't just the shopping bags or the birthday. That moment in the living room, that cold, casual dismissal, was the final confirmation of something I'd been trying not to believe for years. I was never the daughter they chose. I was the daughter they used. Growing up, I had always been the dependable one, the quiet one. While my sister, Ava, had glitter in her hair and fire in her voice, I had books in my bag and lists in my planner. I stayed home to help with chores while she went to parties. I gave up ballet lessons because Ava's gymnastic fees doubled. When the family car broke down one summer, they sold my guitar to help fix it without even telling me. "You're strong," Mom would say. "Ava needs more support." Dad always nodded in agreement, as if it was some unspoken truth that I didn't get to have needs, just strength. When Ava didn't get into her top college, they threw her a cheer-up vacation to Cancun. When I made Dean's List, they said, "That's what we expect from you, Chloe." I remember one Christmas when I saved up for months to buy my parents a coffee machine. Ava got them a keychain she picked up from the mall last minute. Guess whose gift they opened first? Whose they praised? There was always this unspoken equation in our house. Ava equals adored. Chloe equals available. They leaned on me when bills were tight, when emotions ran high, when things needed fixing. I was the steady one, the fixer, the background player in my own family story. And every time they took from me, my time, my savings, my peace, I told myself it was just what you do for family, that someday they'd see me. But they never did. The tuition money was the clearest signal. Not a mistake, not a slip. It was a pattern so old it had its own rhythm. And this time, the damage couldn't be hidden behind fake gratitude or gaslighting. They didn't even ask. They just decided I didn't need my education as much as Ava needed a designer purse. That I'd figured out because I always had. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the silence around me louder than ever. I thought about every time I'd said no to myself so they could say yes to her. I wasn't jealous. I was exhausted. Being the backup daughter had a cost. And for once, I wasn't willing to pay it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask why. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. They had shown me who I was to them, and I finally believed them. So I went to my room, shut the door softly, and sat on the edge of my bed. Everything around me looked the same. The bookshelf stacked with textbooks I paid for, the chipped desk where I planned my future, the corkboard full of scholarships I applied to by myself. It all suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else, someone who had been waiting for approval that was never coming. I opened my closet and pulled out the duffel bag I used when I stayed on campus during orientation week. I began folding clothes, jeans, sweatshirts, a few button-downs, like I was preparing for a trip I didn't know I was taking until just now. No one knocked. No one asked what I was doing. No one cared. I wasn't surprised. When I zipped up the bag, the sound was deafening. It sliced through the silence like a statement. I'm done. I walked back down the stairs slowly. My mom was watching some reality show, feet up on the coffee table, sipping from a wine glass. Ava was still scrolling through her phone, probably texting friends about the new shoes Mom bought her with my tuition. I stood at the edge of the living room, duffel slung over my shoulder. "I'm heading out," I said quietly. Mom looked over, not with worry, but with annoyance. "What's with the attitude?" I didn't answer that. I just gave her a small nod. "Thanks for everything." It wasn't gratitude. It was closure. Dad looked up from his laptop. "You being dramatic again?" I ignored him. No goodbye from Ava. She didn't even look up. I walked out the front door, the hinges creaking behind me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. Outside, the air was cold, sharper than I expected. It filled my lungs with something I hadn't felt in a long time, breath. As I walked down the street, my heart pounded, not from panic, but from something quieter and deeper, grief, fear. But underneath it all, something was cracking open. A strange calm. A whisper I had ignored for years was getting louder. You don't belong there anymore. That house was never home. That family was never safe. I had been surviving inside their world of conditions, expectations, and emotional hand-me-downs. Now I was walking out of it, not to punish them, but to finally choose me. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but for the first time, I knew who I wasn't going to be anymore. The first few days were the hardest. I'd moved in with Sarah, a friend from my college orientation. She had a small apartment near campus, and even though it wasn't much, it felt like freedom. Still, the quiet sting of betrayal hung heavy in the air, especially when I thought about how easily they'd taken what was mine. The $4,200, my future, had vanished without a second thought, and it left me feeling hollow. But I wasn't going to let myself drown in bitterness. I refused. I wasn't going to waste my energy on regret, anger, or revenge. That was petty. What I needed was control, and control would come in silence. It was time to take back everything I had lost. My first step was simple: sever all financial ties. They didn't deserve access to a single cent of mine anymore. I sat at the small desk in Sarah's apartment, surrounded by stacks of textbooks I was too tired to read, and I pulled up my bank account on my laptop. The digital world was quieter than it had ever been before. There, in front of me, was the lingering reminder of my parents' trust in me, the shared accounts, the credit cards they had co-signed, all the strings they had attached to me, pulling me back when I tried to move forward. With shaky hands, I changed the passwords, revoked their access, and removed their names from every account that had ever tied me to them. I didn't care if they screamed, they came running. This was mine, not theirs. Then I made the decision I had been putting off for weeks. I blocked their contact information. I didn't need the guilt. I didn't need the shame they were always trying to pin on me. If they wanted to reach me, they'd have to find another way, but I wasn't about to make it easy for them. I thought back to all the times I had been told, "You're the responsible one, Chloe," as if that was a compliment, as if that didn't mean, "You're the one we can always count on to clean up the mess." But this wasn't just about cleaning up anymore. This was about building something they could never tear down. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. I dove into my college scholarship search, spending late nights writing essays, contacting professors, looking for anything that could relieve the financial burden. And then I picked up a side hustle, tutoring, babysitting, anything that paid. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The more I worked, the more I started to see a different kind of future. One where I didn't rely on them, one where I wasn't constantly expected to carry the weight of their expectations. I wasn't being petty. I wasn't punishing them. I was simply building what I should have had all along. For the first time, I could see a path forward, and it was quiet. It was methodical, and it was mine. In those moments, I realized something crucial. They had taken my tuition fund, but they couldn't take my drive. They could try to break me, but they couldn't break my determination. That quiet power was starting to build within me, and it felt stronger than any rage or regret. And I wasn't stopping. Every time I scrolled through my social media, it felt like I was choking on a bitter pill. There she was, my sister, Ava, smiling into the camera, her arms draped over the newest designer bag, a gift from Mom. Another shopping spree, another expensive, shiny object she didn't need. Each post seemed to mock me, a reminder of the money that should have been mine, the future I should have been able to build without strings attached. But there was something in me now, a flicker at first, of something other than bitterness. A decision to stop letting her and them have that hold over me. I didn't respond to her posts. I didn't comment. Instead, I woke up early every morning before the sun and hit the books, pages turning with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt before. I spent hours poring over finance texts, scribbling notes for my next big paper, and building up a network of peers and professors who saw the drive in me, who could see past the mess that had once defined me. And in the quiet of my little rented room, I found something that Ava would never understand: peace. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about showing them I could survive without them. It was about what I was building inside myself, what I was becoming. I was done being the backup daughter, the one who gave everything and got nothing but guilt in return. I was becoming someone who could stand tall, who didn't need their approval or their endless demands. One day, during office hours, I ran into Professor Hamilton, a no-nonsense economics professor who had been one of the few to genuinely notice me. I had reached out for advice about a research project, and it had turned into a conversation about my future. "You've got something about you," he said, his eyes piercing through the casual veneer I had perfected. "I've seen students struggle with their finances, their family situations. But you don't just want to survive. You want to do something with your life. You want to create." It was the first time in months that someone had believed in me, truly believed in my potential without a motive. Not a parent who saw me as a financial safety net. Not a sister who saw me as competition. Just a man who recognized my will to rise. Professor Hamilton helped me land an internship at a financial consulting firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the first real break I had gotten. I learned the ropes of investment strategies and business models, things I had once only dreamt of understanding. The work was hard, long, and tedious, but it gave me a new sense of worth. I was no longer just the responsible one. I was the one in control of my destiny. As Ava continued to post photos of her new bags and shoes, I was learning how to create spreadsheets that could help me manage my future, not my parents' whims. Each day spent working on my goals felt like a new stitch in a quilt that I was weaving piece by piece from scratch. And with each small success, I knew one thing for sure. I was no longer that little girl who had been used for her good grades and reliable nature. I was becoming something they would never expect. I was becoming me. It had been almost a year since I'd cut ties with my family, a year of building my life on my own terms. Every day felt like a new victory, no matter how small. The freedom I had carved out for myself was sweet, and the quiet was more beautiful than I ever expected. But when the call came, I should have known the storm was brewing. It started with a notification, a simple alert from my bank. Your recent transaction was declined. Please review your account. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was an error. But when I checked the details, my heart dropped. There it was, a charge to my credit card, one I hadn't made. Someone had tried to make a large purchase. Someone I knew very well. I stared at the screen, a sick feeling settling in my stomach. The name on the transaction was familiar. It was my mother. She had used my credit card, the one I had painstakingly blocked from their access, trying to buy another high-end purse for my sister. The nerve. The audacity. I immediately called my bank, and they confirmed it. The charge was reversed, and my account had been locked. There was no way they could process the payment. That was when I knew. They hadn't learned. They hadn't changed. And now they were in for a rude awakening. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a flood of frantic messages. Mom, why was my card declined? I need to speak to you. Now. Dad, what did you do? This is your responsibility. You owe us. Ava, Chloe, why are you making this difficult? You've always been the reliable one. Help. I sat there, staring at their texts, feeling nothing. They had no idea what they were up against. I had learned to build something from nothing, and now they wanted to lean on me again. They thought they could just pick up where they left off, as though I were still that daughter who always caved in. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a deep breath and took the next step. I logged into my bank account one last time and did something they would never expect. I froze every single link they had to my financials. No more shared cards. No more loans under my name. Not a single thread of connection. The next thing I did was call my lawyer. My parents had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. We drafted a formal letter explaining that any further attempts to misuse my name or financial resources would result in legal action. I could already hear the chaos beginning on the other end. Mom, what the hell is going on? Why would you cut us off like this? Dad, you're breaking this family apart. We gave you everything. Ava, I can't believe you're doing this to me. You know I don't have money like you. You're selfish. The messages became more desperate, frantic, and full of guilt. But this time I didn't feel the pull. I wasn't the backup daughter anymore. I wasn't the one they could manipulate into fixing their mess. I let their messages sit in my inbox untouched. They weren't just angry because of a credit card being declined. They were panicking because they realized they had lost their grip on me. And I wasn't coming back. The phone rang, a sound I had come to dread over the past year. It was a number I had blocked. But somehow, I knew this would be different. I stared at the screen for a moment before finally pressing answer. Chloe. My mom's voice cracked through the line, raw with emotion. Please, baby, just listen to me. We didn't mean to hurt you. You have to understand. Her sobs were loud, desperate. I didn't say anything for a while. Just let the silence stretch between us. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't forgiving either. Not yet. You've been silent for so long, she continued, her voice trembling. Your father and I are scared. We don't know what to do. We never meant for things to go this far. Please come back. You're the only one who can help us. The words stung, but I didn't let them affect me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I could finally lay it all out, the truth they had been avoiding for years. You never meant to hurt me? I repeated softly, my voice devoid of anger. Mom, you used my future to fund your shopping sprees. You took everything I had saved, every penny, and gave it to Ava. Then you and Dad acted like I should be grateful for the crumbs you left me. Do you remember the times I had to co-sign loans for the house, or the way I had to bail you both out when things went wrong? I could hear her choking on her sobs, but I wasn't going to let her use it against me anymore. She had done it for years. Remember when I said I wanted to go to college? You told me it was too much of a stretch. You said it was more important for you to spend on Ava's birthday party than my tuition. How about the times I gave up my weekends to help pay bills or take care of things at home because Ava was busy with her friends? You let me do all the heavy lifting, all while pretending like I was the one who owed you. Her crying intensified, but I pressed on. You used me, I said simply, no emotion in my voice. You used my money, my time, and my spirit. And when I finally took a step back to protect myself, you called me selfish. I could hear my dad's voice in the background, muffled but persistent. Chloe, we're sorry. We need you. This is just a rough patch. Please help. No, Dad, I replied calmly. You don't get to use that excuse anymore. I've given enough. You don't deserve any more of my time or my support. My mom's voice faltered. Chloe, please don't do this. I can't lose you two. I'm not going anywhere, I said, finally feeling something close to peace. I'm just finally putting myself first. Something you've never let me do. You spent my support for years. Now I'm spending my peace. The call ended with a quiet, painful silence. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. They would never understand, but that didn't matter anymore. They had shown me time and time again that love for them had always been conditional, based on what I could give, what I could sacrifice. But I had learned something they would never grasp. Love for myself had to be unconditional. And that was all I needed now. It had been 2 years since that phone call. 2 years of silence. 2 years of living my life on my own terms. And in that time, so much had changed. I had graduated with honors, something I had once thought was a distant dream. My business had grown steadily, and it felt like for the first time, I was in control of my future. I was finally doing what I loved, and my career had taken off. The weight of always being the backup daughter, the one who sacrificed her dreams for everyone else, had lifted. Now I was living my dreams. It wasn't just the success that mattered, though. It was the peace, the mental clarity that came with not being tethered to a family that only saw me as a resource. But then the email came. It was from my mom with the subject line, Chloe, please, we need you. I opened it slowly, bracing myself for the same guilt trip I had heard so many times before. But this time there was something different in her tone, something almost desperate. Chloe, the email began, I know it's been a long time and I know I've hurt you. I can't tell you how sorry I am for what happened with your tuition and everything after that. Your dad and I are struggling. We've fallen behind on bills and we just can't keep up. Ava's still not working and we don't know where to turn. Please, we need your help. We don't know who else to turn to. I sat there, staring at the screen. Part of me wanted to feel anger. Part of me wanted to say, I told you so. But what I felt more than anything was a deep sadness, realization that they had never changed. They were still the same people who expected me to fix their messes without taking responsibility for their own actions. I took a deep breath and typed out a response, my fingers moving slowly across the keys as I chose my words carefully. Mom, I've forgiven you, I wrote, but I'm not your backup plan anymore. I've worked too hard to build my life, and I'm not going to undo all of that for you. I wish things were different. I wish you had seen me, truly seen me when I needed you the most. But I can't be the one who bails you out every time life gets tough. I've learned to take care of myself, and now it's your turn to do the same. I didn't send the email immediately. I sat there, reading my words over and over again. It felt like the end of something, but also the beginning of something new. I had learned to set boundaries to protect myself, and I was finally putting them into practice. When I did send it, I felt a strange sense of calm. They had spent years using me, thinking they could always lean on me. But I wasn't that person anymore. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. "You don't understand. We're falling apart." I didn't respond. What I had once feared, that I would be alone, that I would be the one left out, was no longer a concern. I had built something far more valuable than what they ever expected. Independence. Strength. A life of my own. And as I sat there, surrounded by the freedom I had fought for, I realized something even more profound. I didn't need them to complete me. I was whole on my own. The family they had thrown away, the one they had underestimated, had become the family they needed.